Welcome back to the Boilers Extra. Nathan Baird from the Indianapolis Star.
Sam King from the Journal and Courier. I don't get the lower third name tag with mine.
I know. I just had him switch sides because it seems like we always end up on the wrong side. I don't want people. You don't want people thinking you're me, right? Like, let's just get that out there. We are at, what is this place called? Amica Mutual Pavilion. Sorry. We're Purdue in Providence, Rhode Island. Where Purdue will play High Point on Thursday in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Today was interview day. It was also open practice day, but open practice actually is just like layup drills, and it's a shoot around. It tells us nothing. It means nothing. It's just guys getting loose. It does mean a little something. We saw Fletcher Lawyer with a sleeve on his left arm, but we also saw him make, what'd you say it was, like 17 threes in a row?
Him make 17 straight from the corner, and then he moved to the wing and started banking in threes on purpose, banking in threes. At first I was like, oh, that went off the glass, and then I realized he was banking in several in a row. So no, he looked pretty fine. The first thing I saw him do when he took the court was dribble down the length of the court and shoot a left-handed layup, and looked fine. So that was the one thing we learned from shoot around. We were told he's going to play. He looks to be fine. Didn't seem to disrupt his shooting, at least unguarded today.
Yeah, and we couldn't watch High Point's shoot around because that was when Purdue's interviews were going on. So deemed that more important for obvious reasons. One thing I will say about Lawyer is that I'm waiting to see, and this won't be apparent until the game starts on Thursday, 12:40 p.m. I believe it is, on what, True TV I think is where that one's showing. Check your local listings, but I want to see him play defense, and that's not the premier part of his game, shall we say, but this is a team that likes to attack downhill with its guards. It's got some bigger guards and bigger wings, and it's going to come on the attack and try to get to the basket. It's going to try to do the thing that exploit the thing that Purdue is most vulnerable at. Not necessarily because it's Purdue. That's just what they do best. They had a 15-point comeback in the second half to win the Big South Tournament Championship game. That's why they're here for the first time ever. And they only made 8 threes in that game. They just scored 50 points with their bench. And it's guys coming from everywhere to attack you. And Purdue has been dealing with this thing for a while. It's not just Fletcher Lawyer, but like as a team, perimeter defense, keeping the ball out of the post, that's going to be crucial on Thursday.
Yeah, if you look at these two teams, offensively, their statistics kind of mirror each other a little bit, except Purdue gets a lot of points from either the paint or the three-point area. And High Point is a team that will attack. I talked to Aaron Fine, the walk-on guard from Noblesville, freshman, and he said, I don't know how to pronounce their point guard's name, Jiffa, something like that.
Yeah.
But
he's French.
Yeah,
I talked to him today. Good kid.
Aaron Fine has been simulating him in practice and said, they just want me to get downhill and get to my left hand. And they want Purdue to see that as much as possible so that you can be as prepared for it as possible. I think that's, this has the potential to be a very high-scoring offensive showcase tomorrow. But I also assume, and you talk to the defensive coaches on staff for Purdue, that the last 6 days have been really about fine-tuning this defense, and especially once it found out who the opponent was, kind of catering it towards a team that can do what High Point does.
Yeah, the past 6 weeks have been about trying to refine this defense. And I talked to Paul Lusk and Terry Johnson. I sat down with them for, 20 minutes or so each back. It was the week leading into the Indiana game. So it's been whenever that was. I was back in early February, before they started losing. And at the time, it was kind of a piece about, they have these co-defensive coordinators. It's the two most experienced assistants on the staff that Matt Painter put in charge of that role. And what had they done to kind of help bring the defense around? Well, right about the time I would have started writing it, the defense went the other way. And that's something that they've both, owned up to an extent, because they feel like the plan is there, the execution has not been there. And players talk about it the same way, that they feel like the design is there, the rules are there. If they follow them, they'll defend people. And that has just been a test that they haven't been able to pass against some of the best teams in the Big Ten over the past 6 weeks. And they've got to pass it now. They're not going to advance in these games, most likely, if they don't pass that pretty much every night from here on in.
Yeah, and if Purdue does get through Thursday with High Point, you're facing two really good teams, whether it's Clemson or Nice, in the second round. That's that's going to be a step up even from what you see out of High Point. No disrespect to High Point or the Big South Conference, but those are teams that have played, especially in Clemson's case, a lot of high major programs, and that's what Purdue has really struggled against. Is the toughest teams on the schedule ended up being down these final 9-10 games, and we've seen a lot of them, Michigan State, so forth and so on, take advantage of Purdue's defensive lapses.
So High Point we're going to talk about High Point real quick and just what we heard from them, and then we'll get into more with Purdue because I think there's a lot of interesting angles to discuss there. But with High Point, talking to some of their players today, talking to their coach, Alan Huss, who people might remember, he was at Culver Academies, he was at La Lumiere before he went into the college level, and this is his second year at High Point. They've played one high major team in 2 years at High Point. That includes they were in the CBI last year, made it the championship game, still never played a high major opponent and all that. They lost to Georgia last year by, I think, like 8 points. But this is a team that they've won 14 games in a row. They haven't lost in a minute. That included getting their first conference championship ever. They were back. They won the regular season for the second straight year in the Big South. And they came into this year with their own target on their back, kind of the same way that Purdue would to some extent, being the two-time defending champion in the Big Ten. Like, they were picked number one in their league before the start of the year. And at one point they're 3-2 in the league, and then they just get on this roll and go to another title. And I feel like this is a team that comes in, as any lower seed knows, they're going to be playing a really strong team. But I think they are fine with, they know that whoever they're playing is, I can't remember one of the kids I talked to today. I think it was Kamani Hamilton, one of their big guards, was saying that, like, well, are they human? Because if they're human, like, we can play with them. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure they're human beings.
Zach Edey's gone. I'm not sure that he was human.
That's a good point. No, like I just say I don't think right now, from the way they're talking, and this may change when the lights come on in here again tomorrow, and it's March Madness. But right now, it seems like a team that is, hey, whatever challenge it is, bring it on. They've been proving themselves each and every night in their conference for a while now. And I think probably their coaches have said, hey, of all the draws we could have got, we happen to get a team that might have defensive vulnerabilities against what we want to do. Yeah,
absolutely. And the thing that kind of comes with that, if High Point is able to get downhill, is can they draw fouls on Trakoff and Rent, which has been a concern. And when he's come out of games, teams have gone on runs against Purdue because, Trey's probably not one of the best defenders on the team, but he's the best offensive option. It is how they run their offense through the center and have for many years. And despite the fact he's not a 7-footer, he's been very productive when he gets the ball in the paint. One-on-one, I don't know that anybody can stop him really, or hasn't proven to yet. So Purdue's gonna have to keep him on the floor in a game where you're gonna just, quite frankly, probably gonna have to outscore the other team. That sounds logical, but outscore the other team in a high-scoring game. Because when you look at what Purdue does defensively and what High Point does defensively, doesn't pressure guards, does more like a drop coverage. I think it just kind of lends itself to a game that's going to be played in the 80s.
I didn't get a chance to talk to Matt Painter today, weirdly. I don't think any of us did, because we were again down
in there at the very end.
We were down in Purdue's open locker room while Matt was down doing his podium interviews. But I did talk to Brandon Brantley today because I wanted to kind of touch on this idea of Trakoff and Wren, because obviously the foul trouble had been an issue. We've seen so many games where Matt Painter starts subbing him in offense for defense. Well, they basically did that the entire game against Michigan. They didn't wait for him to get in foul trouble. They preemptively started doing those sub-in, sub-out situations. And I asked Brandon Brantley, is that the plan going forward? And he said no, that as far as he knows, it was more of and it's because Matt Painter ultimately makes a decision, but that was much more a strategy about Michigan and its 2 7-footers and what they could possibly have done to get him in foul trouble, as they did in Ann Arbor a few weeks before that. And that he thinks in a game like this that probably will not be the way that they operate. I think against a team like this, you probably want Trakoff and Wren on the floor in uninterrupted stretches as much as you can, because I think that's an advantage Purdue might have in this game, is getting the ball inside to him. And what do? They have a 7-footer down there. He was the defensive player of the year in their conference, but it sounds like that's not going to be the way they approach this from the start. Now, maybe if he gets in foul trouble, they'll have to do that, but it sounds like it's going to be just a normal night at the start for Trakoff and Wren.
Yeah, I talked to Will Berg, who has been inserted early in the last 2 games, and it was just kind of more like, is this your role now? Are you going to be subbing in the first half of games? And he doesn't know. To be honest, he's been so infrequent in the times he's gotten in games. And he said, I'm ready if Purdue needs me, and if they don't, I'll be the best cheerleader from the bench type situation. But he's really kind of been approaching things like he's ready for every opportunity. And he said he's kind of aware of mismatches that Purdue might have tomorrow, and that might give him an opportunity. But if not, so be it. He probably would be, if he's being honest, would say, if I don't play, that's probably a good thing for Purdue's situation. So I think that they're going into this game with a lot of respect for High Point and what it's capable of doing, and knowing that Trey Coppman-Wren's got to be on the floor for extended minutes and not kind of wavering him in and out and having him run back to the scores table every minute for an entire half.
Some other things that came up today, I think we both talked to CJ Cox at one point. He's going to have a couple dozen people here. He is from Lexington, Massachusetts, which is about 45 minutes from here, I think, on a good day. You never know with Boston traffic, but he's a local guy, and this worked out. From talking to him today, I could tell that he was excited. He had been kind of watching the potential geography of the NCAA tournament, and all these guys do, and he was seeing a lot of Denver, a lot of Seattle, as we all were, and the whole time he was kind of like, oh, I hope it's Providence, and then it's Providence, and he gets to come home, and it's a big deal for him. He is the New England culture of basketball has played into his life in some ways, because prep schools, boarding schools are a bigger deal out here. It's more part of just like the basic sports culture out here. And the extra year that he took in college helped him become the player he was when he showed up at Purdue. And was talking to Raphael Davis today about for a story that I wrote about Alan Huss, because that was his coach at La Lumiere. And we were just talking about Purdue things, and he's kind of semi-predicted that like either Cox or Jakari Harris or both might be in for a big day tomorrow, because both those guys have, probably needed a break at the end of the year, but they're both the kind of guys that Purdue needs to come through, because they are the antagonists to whatever High Point's going to be throwing at them.
No, and this is why you see games where CJ Cox goes off against Alabama. When you have Braden Smith and Trey Coppman-Wren, and if Fletcher Loyer is 100%, the threat of a 50% three-point shooter, I guess it's 47 now after the last game, but a really good shooter from the outside, that lends itself to, especially teams that don't see that much talent on one team in their league, some guys to have big games who, aren't guys going out and scoring double figures every single night. And that's probably, I didn't talk to Raphael like you did, but I imagine that's probably the thought process there, is like, this is a team that's outmatched and is going to have to focus on really three guys scoring 13 to 20 points a game.
What else did you learn today from Purdue's guys?
I talked to a lot of people just kind of about random things. One thing I did talk to Cam Heide and Caleb First about, but Cam had a really great response, is just the fact that Purdue is being one of the biggest teams tabbed as a potential upset pick. And, Cam was kind of like, hey, 2 years ago, we lost to a 16 seed. That carries over for, a couple years. And people don't forget that, especially when Purdue's lost to double-digit seeds numerous times. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of like there's Purdue again playing a double-digit seed, which happens because you're a top 4 seed 8 years in a row. But when you lose some of those games,
part of why it happens.
Yeah,
part of why it happens.
When you lose some of those games that you shouldn't, you get that moniker. And last year, you're going to have to prove that wasn't just some fluke run where you had the best player in college basketball. Purdue's got to be a team that routinely is beating the higher seeded teams that it's going to see in the first round, as long as it has similar success to what it's had in the last 5 years or so. But Cam Heide was kind of like, listen, it's another game, and we're respecting High Point just as if they were preparing to play Michigan State or whoever it might be, because at this point, if you're one of 68 teams in this field, or I guess after tonight, 64 teams, you're a pretty good team. And that doesn't matter if you're a 16 seed or you're a 1 seed. As we've seen, here since 2019 anyway, 16 seeds are capable of beating 1 seeds. And there's, been a series of 14 seeds and 15 seeds advancing deep into the tournament.
I think I read today, and this may have been in Purdue's notes, it's like the 8th longest streak of being a 4 seed or higher. I think it's 8 straight years. No, I'm sorry, fourth longest streak 8 years in a row is the fourth longest streak of being a 4 seed or higher in the NCAA tournament. And that says something, because this isn't an easy league. And to be able to do it with this kind of regularity and the turnover, especially in this day and age of college sports, is I think that's an achievement. Now I think you've got to make it stand up. And each year the NCAA tournament is fairly random, but every year is also an opportunity when you get that seed to follow through on it and take advantage. And this is a team that I think if Purdue can come out early and take control of a game early, it's another game where I feel like that close of the first half might be crucial, because you can easily see a game where a combination of Trakoff and Wren, Purdue's shooters come in, if they hit some shots, all of a sudden now maybe Purdue can build a 10 to 12 point lead going into the final few minutes of the first half. Now what happens? Do they hold that lead? Do they avoid that second or whatever foul on Trakoff and Wren? And do they hold that lead? Because that's where you've seen some leakage. And when I think you start to give a team like this an opportunity, that, there's the people in this stand. I expect a good Purdue crowd here, but everybody else is going to root for the underdog. And that energy can start working against you.
Yeah, and 2 years ago in Columbus, it was the same thing. There was a heavy Purdue contingent, as you would expect in a 3 to 3.5 hour drive for most of those people. But the longer that game went and the score staying close, the people who were not Purdue fans were fully embracing Fairleigh Dickinson, especially probably the Memphis and Florida Atlantic fans who were waiting for the next round. And that crowd became kind of split by the end of it. You're either rooting for Purdue or rooting against Purdue. And it was a lot of people who wanted to see history if they didn't have a rooting interest at all. And that's going to be the case again. I've covered that. I covered Oral Roberts beating Ohio State in the COVID tournament at Mackey Arena. There's a lot of proof in the pudding that anything can happen. And if you're Purdue, you kind of hope that you just kind of impose your will and don't let a team that doesn't match you in terms of talent kind of hang around and have a chance at the end.
I am ready to go get some famous Rhode Island pizza, unless you have anything you want to add at this point.
I've had one meal in 2 days, so yeah, I'm on board with that.
Well, you should maybe take some ownership of that life decision. But we are going to go get fueled up for tomorrow. Come back to IndyStar.com, JCOnline.com. We've already got several pieces up by the time you're seeing this. We're keeping those sites, I think, pretty well loaded, but we're going to have a lot more coverage there on Thursday when Purdue plays High Point in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. For Sam King, I'm Nathan Baird. See you tomorrow.